In this IriusRisk training video, we will discuss functional components, what they are, and how to use them. First, what is a functional component? IriusRisk functional components represent and describe key application logic and capabilities. I like to refer to this as the behavior of an application. And we need them because, well, most development activity happens in the code that runs on the relatively unchanging architecture. You can use functional components to iterate on designs before writing code or as part of the threat modeling user stories. Identifying plausible cyber threats is a core step in threat modeling, but taking action is what leads to improved security. Development teams need to refine their threat modeling outputs, determine which countermeasures to act on, identify those that aren't relevant, and which ones have already been implemented. IriusRisk wants to ensure that we enable development teams with the ability to threat model. So delivering these new functional components supports that initiative. Let's talk about how we actually use these new type of components. As we stated, these components are going to represent behavioral characteristics. An example of what I'm referring to can be seen with IriusRisk itself. IriusRisk's platform runs in the cloud. So there are network boundaries, connectivity to other networks, there are servers and services, database, blob storage, and so on. The platform also has a functional aspect. We have the ability to log in, log out, create projects, add and remove user accounts, use an API, create rules, and so on. These functions need to be threat modeled. So this is where we leverage functional components. Let's take a look at how we can use these functional components. What we're looking at here is what I would consider a traditional threat model that focuses on the infrastructure components in the flow of data and assets. Most development teams are not focused on what we are looking at. They are primarily focused on a specific application that lives within the model. They're not normally concerned with what's going on within our operating environment, and in my experience, they don't really want to know. They are focused on the functionality and design of the application itself. This model represents the overall delivery of the application, but as you can see, we have also embedded project components that will represent the application. For those not familiar with project components, it is simply the encapsulation of a project and represented as a singular component. Let's go ahead and drill down into the project component. As we look at this, I think the first thing that stands out to most people is there are no data flows. We just have a boundary with several functional components. This is because data flows represent a transfer of an asset. Within an application, there is rarely any transfer of an asset being something like PII or a credit card number. Those assets are contained within the application. What we want to represent is the application's features. All of these functional components are stored under the functional IriusRisk section of the diagramming components. At this point, you may be wondering, how am I going to get any value from just adding components to a diagram? And this would be a fair question. And honestly, the value at this point is somewhat limited. The key to greater value is context. We add this context by answering the questionnaire associated with each component. Let's take a look at that. This new section adds a new paradigm to the questionnaire that people have traditionally used for infrastructure. These questionnaires are designed so that developers can answer at their leisure and not block the development process. As you can see, we have an unsure answer that can be selected. You can always come back and update this information in the future as the application evolves. However, we do encourage you to answer even if the answer is unsure. This just simply means that you will have a countermeasure that may or may not be relevant. As you complete these questionnaires, the state of the countermeasure gets modified. That state could be required, not applicable, or even implemented. By having the ability to modify the countermeasure state like this, we drastically reduce the noise or burden on the developer. I have answered these questions at random, so let's take a look at the impact of that. Looking at the countermeasure state, we see that several have moved into either a required or implemented state. This really helps your teams prioritize work activity. I encourage you to reach out to your development team and share these new features. Building a threat model is definitely a team effort, and we hope that adding these new functional components will better enable you and your respective teams. I hope this video has been helpful, and for more information or questions about the IriusRisk platform, please contact your customer success manager or go to support.iriusrisk.com. Thank you, and have a good day.